What's up, everybody? Welcome to TeslaFix. Today, it's like an awesome day because the Teslabot folded a shirt. They finally did it. Teslabot is solved. And of course, we have another startup that BMW is actually invested in. And we're gonna check out this great startup. And we have a special person here because when we talk about bots, of course, we have to put one person here, and that's Scott Walter, everybody. All right, Scott, thanks for being here again. I'm looking forward for this interview because, of course, Tesla solved the Teslabot. No, that's a little bit, I'm a little bit over exaggerating, but the Teslabot folded a shirt. And today we want to talk about the chores that Teslabot did and if he did it alone, what was happening there. So, Scott, thanks for being here. How are you?
Good, Jan, and we're on opposite sides of the Rhine right now, I think. You're at the headwaters. Yep. And I'm almost all the up here in the Dusseldorf area. And we had a snowpocalypse yesterday where they had the biggest snowstorm in since 1987 here. Can you believe that?
Oh no.
And do you know how much snow they got?
Yeah, how much?
That much.
Oh my God, apocalyptic.
Yes, about 5 centimeters, or in America, in freedom units, about 2 inches.
Wow.
But no one knows how to drive in the snow around here, so it was treacherous, believe me. So yeah, and some news has kind of broken this week, right? From I think on Monday there was something, and today there was also another big announcement from another kind of competitor to the Teslabot. And yeah, we've got quite a bit to talk about. Where do you want to begin?
Yeah, I think we should begin with the Teslabot folding a shirt, because that's the point where we started off before. Of course, we had our great success episode together here where we talked about the changes of the Teslabot. Then we met in Zurich, actually in person. So I'm going to link the videos, of course, down below here. And yeah, we looked in depth and enjoyed a very nice Glühwein together. And now the Teslabot folded a shirt. What an awesome thing. I'm going to pull up the video and maybe you can just talk over a little bit about what is happening here. Maybe you can explain the audience what we are seeing right now. What is happening?
Okay, so this is not a sweatshop or anything like that. But this is where they are training the Teslabots to do different tasks. And in this case, they are trying to demonstrate whether the Teslabot has the dexterity to be able to fold a t-shirt. This is something, as you know, Alexandra has been asking. It's like, will the Teslabot be able to fold laundry? And I think I've been on the record that I didn't think it would be able to for a while, but as we can see, it is mechanically capable. Now, it did not do it itself. Some people noticed right away, with some keen eyes, notice there's a little bit of movement to the lower right corner where you can kind of see a hand go in and out, and that's a teleoperator. And it was kind of confirmed with a follow-up comment to this when this was posted out by Elon that it's not fully autonomous yet, but eventually it will. And this is starting of the training runs to be able to teach the bot these different tasks. And eventually, if you get enough examples of it, it will learn how to do this by itself autonomously in a completely unstructured environment. But the first question is, like, can it actually fold laundry? That's a question you have to answer. And conceptually, we've kind of known the answer was yes, because of the Aloha project demonstrated way back last spring that with some very simple pinchers, there were a lot of tasks that you could do, even though they were telerobotically done. So the thing about a humanoid robot is there's 2 aspects to it. There's like the mechanical aspects, what it's mechanically capable of doing, and then the software aspects of what it's sort of able to figure out and do on its own. And in many cases, it was really hard to test out the mechanics without having the good neural net to be able to do it. But there are neural nets available that are dirt cheap that we can go ahead to be able to test these things out, and they are called humans. So instead of using the AI that we're trying to develop to be able to figure it out itself, we can use the humans as the replacement right now to go in and see whether the hardware has been designed correctly enough to have the dexterity to do it. And if it is, then we're confident we can start moving ahead with the training of it. So again, the Aloha project showed that with just pincer fingers, you can go around and do quite a bit. And so we expected, well, Optimus should be able to do this, and now we know it can. And that's a very important step because the head of the Optimus project, Milan Kovic, also sent out a post right after this saying that this was pretty much a demonstration of the hardware capabilities. And now they're very comfortable. It's able to do sort of the tasks they want it to. And it's really a software problem now. They have to just go ahead and train, which means they're probably pretty happy with the Gen 2 design. talked about all those changes that went into it from Gen 1 to Gen 2. And you can see some of the Gen 1 robots sitting off in the back there. I think there's maybe 8 bots total there, but I think most of the bots that we're seeing are actually the Gen 1s. But it's telling us that the hardware is, the design is probably pretty close, that they would be confident to start producing them in larger numbers, which means they can start doing more training, real world training, and then real world demonstrations on the factory floor.
Absolutely. So what we can see right here, you've already noticed, or savvy people from the internet, of course, notice this on the right here. You can see the hand coming in here.
Right there.
And and of course, it would be awesome to actually see a side-by-side thing where we could see it, because I don't know why they didn't record that, because it would be very awesome. I think it would be still very impressive, of course. I don't think they wanted to trick people here. I think it's just that they wanted to had this recording showcasing that and just posted that. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the robot is capable of doing this task, and you can kind of see what I find very interesting is that the head movement actually now isn't moving the head, because it's not necessary right now. I think because it's also with a teleoperator. Or why do you think the head is not moving like in the Tesla showcase we had?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of movement. Yeah, so we can see some. I'm pretty sure it's mirroring whatever the teleoperator is doing. So if the teleoperator is not really moving his head, then it's going to kind of keep in that fixed position. So what I think is going on is the teleoperator is not looking over to his side to see what's going on, but actually is probably wearing a headset and is seeing the cameras that Optimus is seeing. So long as the operator is confident that they can see enough, then they will be able to go ahead and do it. Now, it's going to be a bit tricky because there's some sort of hand controller. There's probably like data gloves on there. And there's some tracking system. It might also just be some off-the-shelf tracking system that you use it for video games, like a Kinect or something like that, to be able to do the tracking that they're then mapping to have it move. But what's important is the operator has to sort of see what Optimus is seeing to check the hands, because I'm not sure what kind of haptic feedback you are going to get. You might be able to get like some vibrations and a few other things, but you're not going to get the sense of grip or feel that you would get if you actually were there. So you have to do it a lot with your vision system to tell, am I actually grabbing the fabric, and have I grabbed it properly to be able to do this kind of motion and moving around? So it's probably not as easy to do as you would think telerobotically, because it doesn't quite feel the same. It's close. And even though you're in proximity and everything else, it's a little bit tough to tell. So teleoperation is not quite as easy as everyone would think, but it's very important for the training set. And it's also important to do it in the real world, because you can do a lot in simulation. So, you know, they're going through and simulating a lot of things and using those things to be able to train the neural network to be able to get ahead and do it. And that will work on, say, very rigid kind of objects, so blocks that you're moving around that'll kind of understand the relationship. But even those little blocks that you're moving around have slightly different physics than what you'd be seeing in a simulation. Trying to simulate a T-shirt inside of a simulator is very difficult. Right. And at that point, it's like, if you want to start training it on how to do that, you're going to have to start doing it with the real thing. So this is when you need to go to teleoperation and interacting with real world objects, because getting the physics of that is not easy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also wanted to share right now here one thing, because you've talked about the project Aloha. And I wanted to share this as well, so anybody can see that. And I think it's pretty interesting as well, because, of course, here, I mean, I think that's sped up. I'm going to check why it's sped up. Of course, it's super sped up.
Yeah, I think it might be sped up 3 or 5 times, something like that. And they taught it telerobotically. So all these operations you're seeing, they had done previously up to 50 times. And now the system that they have understands enough that those particular tasks, it's able to do it itself autonomously. So they are not doing it telerobotically right now, even though it was taught that way. And the system is able to sort of figure out what it has to do because it knows enough about its environment. And that's pretty impressive, because it took only around 50 trials. So a training set of 50 examples of doing that task was enough for them to get something like 80 to 90% accuracy. And, you know, there were cases where the robot completely missed and, you know, dropped the pan and did all these other things. But, you know, there are other cases where we can see it was very successful in doing what seems to be a fairly complex operation that you would not expect hands like that could do.
Yeah, Absolutely. I mean, they're just two pinch arms. And now imagine the Teslabot having 5 fingers with tactile sensors inside of them,
Hmm.
where he could take the egg, for example, and like Elon said, he in a few months it should be able to thread a needle. And yeah, that's super interesting, of course, when we see something like this. I mean, how do you see the whole robotics industry developing right now? I mean, for you, it must be like super exciting now, because now
Yeah.
suddenly this explosion happened of innovation in a short amount of time. And since you with your company doing simulations as well and stuff like this and develop those things over many, many years, I mean, for you, it must be Christmas every day almost. Or how is it? I mean,
Yeah, it is, because to see these developments moving as quickly as they are, and you see almost these competing press releases, and then there's
yeah.
also a couple of companies that are kind of quiet. I'm just kind of waiting. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, they must be sitting on something big because they must be also noticing a lot of these announcements that are coming from Tesla, that are coming from Figure, and
Mhm.
some that would have come through CES and these graduate students. There's probably going to be more and more coming as we start to see more of AI embodiment going forward. I just get the feeling there's going to be a lot more announcements of cooperations between some of these different bot companies and the potential end users, these larger companies. And we already saw an example of that today.
Yes, we saw this. Yeah, so this is interesting. That's a new player on the map. You could say. So this is their promo video here, a small teaser of Figure, and I have the video right here. I'm going to pull it up. Maybe you can give a brief introduction on what Figure is and where it came from, or maybe a little bit the background that
Yes,
you know. I
yes,
mean,
yes.
it's
So
a newer one, but yeah.
yes. So as we know, in I think around August 2021, the Teslabot project was announced. Now that was not the first humanoid robot project that was around there. There had been several other companies that were working in this space. Of course, Boston Dynamics very famously, and Honda with the Asimov
Yeah.
project were doing that. And various other universities were kind of moving in that space, like trying to come up with bipedal robots. And there were some other companies that, let's say, were kind of in stealth mode or not very well known, that had been doing it since the teens, Agility Robotics and Sanctuary. And then after Tesla came out there, people started to notice it a lot more. It's like maybe this was a potential. Some people kind
Mhm.
of laughed at the idea, but others said, well, wait a minute, maybe there's something about this and we should look into it. And so within a few months after that, Figure was announced, also coming up because they saw that there was also a potential in there. And there was
Mhm.
venture capital that clearly agreed with them to be able to kind of fund the startup. And then, of course, you have several companies in China also being announced, soon after the Tesla bot, that they were moving in that space, that they're going to be able to do that, as well as, the entire country of China literally
Yeah.
having a program now that say that, yes, this is very important to the future of our economy. We want to encourage investments in humanoid bots. So
Yeah.
up until now, Tesla has really been the only automotive company. You do have like the investment in Boston Dynamics, which is coming through Hyundai. Honda had done a little bit, but they never really, they haven't figured out how to put it into production yet, or use it in the manufacturing. So Tesla's been the only one that's clearly been kind of focused in that area. And you're just kind of wondering, what are the other automotive OEMs doing? Are they just kind of sit around and kind of wait? And do they not really believe it? Are they afraid that they're going to be kind of ridiculed if they move into that space? Well, what happened this morning? There's a press
Yeah.
release announcing a partnership between Figure and the BMW plant in South Carolina. So this is not
Mhm.
happening in BMW in Germany, but still BMW US North America,
Yeah.
is a subsidiary of BMW Corporation, and is a rather interesting announcement that they made. So
Absolutely.
yes, so they're talking about basically a cooperative agreement that they're going to be moving
Mhm.
into. They're not saying how many they're going to be buying and everything else, but they've sort of laid out a timetable of what they want to do. Figure's going to go in, and they're going to start to identify areas that they believe they can automate with the humanoid bot,
Mhm.
start proving it out, and then eventually start deploying some of those things over the next like 12 to 24 months. It's not clear how many are going to be going on there and everything else. But this is probably a pretty good strategy on the part of BMW, and I would say
Yeah.
of any automotive OEM, is that the bots are coming. We can argue when they are coming, but those who have started to lay the groundwork and understand it are going to have the first mover advantage, and are going to be able to understand what you can and cannot do with them, and will help guide the development so that they are going to be the early ones to benefit from it. That's going to give them a huge competitive advantages. A lot of the others, if they still aren't looking at it, may be caught flat-footed and suddenly realize that, well, wait a minute, we're way behind. It's going to take them 2 or 3 years to catch up. And sometimes that could be the death knell right there, because if your competitors are making twice the margins you are, and then you get into some sort of pricing war, you're not going to survive. So you always have to find a way to innovate. And what's interesting is that the South Carolina plant is the most efficient plant of all the BMW plants around the world.
Interesting.
And they're going ahead and they're taking it yet another step further. Now, I was talking with Herbert and Cern Basher this morning about it. Sort of the feeling is that maybe the reason they're doing it is because it is such an efficient plant. The way it's been set up, it may be a lot easier to bring the humanoid bots in there, because we were seeing a lot of the operations, the manual operations are going on in there, and they look really easy. I was really shocked at how simple a lot of them were. It's like, wow, that actually won't be very hard to do with, that's the real low-hanging fruit. That should be very easy for a humanoid bot to be able to go in and do.
You mean at BMW's plant, or
at BMW? At BMW, yeah. They were showing some tasks that are being done manually right now that look like they would be really easy, and there's not like a whole lot of pressure as far as the cycle time, or it has to be really fast. It's picking up a simple part, bring it on over, and basically press fitting it in. It's like, wow, that's real easy. Nothing fancy, no fancy tooling or anything like that. Nothing having to jump around. It's a very simple, almost pick and place, but still a little bit of light assembly going on in there. Putting some decals and other things in different places that look like, it'd be very easy to do with a humanoid bot, and even some others that may require a little bit of tooling, but you can see eventually you'll be able to get there. So it's quite feasible that they would be able to use these bots. And of course, the Figure just announced their bot really a couple of months ago, revealing that it's able to walk, that it does have hands, that it was able to do, the Keurig test of being able to put a coffee pod into the coffee maker. And, which seems like a very simple task, but according to them, this was something that they were able to train the bot by showing it videos of humans doing this. And from it learned enough about its world to be able to attempt to do the same thing itself. And so it has a certain amount of dexterity, and what it's doing here, the requirements there are very close to some of the operations we were seeing in the BMW plant, as far as the kind of dexterity you would need. So it's quite possible that this bot, already in its form, may be good enough for the early trials to test out. It's not going to be the final form. There's going to be a lot of more iterations on this, I'm sure, before they get to that. But they've got a pretty aggressive time frame of, starting within the next year to be showing it on the factory, and then trying to accelerate it from there. But it's one of those that BMW is experimenting, trying to learn from this, and they'll probably make a decision whether to continue to move forward or not. And it's being done not as a purchase, but as robot as a service, the RaaS model.
Makes sense to have it in the robot as a service model. I had Cern Basher on my channel as well, as you know, because you also kind of checked that we match up a little bit, and it was super interesting to see the pricing models that you can really, how much revenue lays in this robotics industry, not even when you sell the bots, but to rent it out, and how much utilization a company could have when they use a bot. So Tesla won't sell those things for a long time, in my opinion. But there are different cases that you can make. Maybe lease them out, a leasing business in that sense, or something about maybe the work that is done or something like this. There are different models. And of course, you can check the video out on my channel as well to the audience now if you're interested in that. But it's interesting to see the potential of those bots, because they could do 20-hour shifts, or get the battery swapped out in between, hot swapping maybe possible, something like this. And just, when gonna be replaced when something is wrong, they're gonna walk away or being taken away, and then another robot replaces the one on the line. And even if they have a $5 job to do, that would already be a huge win on the pricing side for the company itself, on the revenue side.
Absolutely. Now, you know a lot about branding and marketing. I mean, that's more your expertise.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, what kind of changed today with this announcement? What's different all of a sudden?
Yeah, it's interesting to see that because BMW actually now the narrative kind of changed a little bit with this announcement because I mean BMW. I have my own opinion about BMW. They were a very first mover or early mover with the i3 they put out, actually. They had a BMW i3, a smaller carbon fiber car, really, like they thought it through. That was a pure EV. They designed this EV special. And now they're coming out with their EVs that are actually just for hybrids, for internal combustion engine, you name it. Every propulsion system you can put in there, in that, or every engine type you can order your BMW now, and this strategy was totally off. But now with this announcement, it's kind of shifted again to the pioneership of BMW with the i3 or something like this in that direction. Now the narrative changes a little bit because now BMW is back on the map again, and of course this will have a huge impact on the stock itself as well. And I think BMW will have, now they can be proud again, and it's not a coincidence that they, not just because the startup is also in the US or it makes sense to have it there, but that they don't do it in Germany. It's important to do that because that if you want to do something innovative, you don't actually do it in Germany, especially with all those labor laws we have, and the criticism is way bigger here than in the US. And in the US, they are now competing with Tesla, which sounds way better than in Germany with competing with the Workers' Council.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And remember, South Carolina, I don't think they have the UAW down there. So they're one of those what they call right to work states. So which is the reason why a lot of the European OEMs went to the South rather than up to the Midwest, because they had the situation they did not have to worry about having unions in there. So this allows them to experiment a little bit.
They already have enough red tape bureaucracy.
Right.
They don't want to have more red tape bureaucracy.
So I think there's a couple things that happened. Is that before this announcement, people still thought the whole idea of using a humanoid robot in manufacturing was silly. You know, it's just Tesla's doing it, and a couple other people looking at it.
Absolutely.
But this, come on, it's not absolutely serious. This kind of legitimizes it a little bit. So suddenly it's like, well, wait a minute. There is a serious German company which is actually going ahead and do this. Maybe this isn't such a crazy idea after all. And this is like a NACS moment, where that as soon as Ford made that announcement, suddenly, you know, GM and others followed suit. So I am expecting that you are going to begin to see over the next coming months, other companies considering the same thing. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be automotive. I mean, we'd be expecting a little bit of that, but it could just be all kinds of companies. And in some cases, it might even be with Tesla. So we're not surprised that this was not an agreement that BMW made with Tesla. So the automotive companies are probably like, they're our competitors. We really don't want to use the Teslabot. And Tesla is probably not at the stage that they're trying to set these things up. They have their own internal configurations to deal with. So they already have a playground to be able to test it. They don't need someone else. But you could imagine a lot of these other companies that are involved in manufacturing or have a lot of labor approaching Tesla because they don't really care. They don't compete. So why not? So that's probably, you know, one of the first major things that happened. The other is, and I know you've had Alex on here before. So let's say,
of course.
Alex and I, we differ a little bit in what's going on. So the Herbert asked, was this a PR stunt? I said, okay. You know, if Figure had just made some announcement like they've made a couple others, those could be a PR stunt. You know, the coffee maker thing, some people just say, oh, that's a PR stunt. But when you make an announcement with some other company, the question is like, okay, are they both involved in a PR stunt here or together or not? And usually I would say not, because my experience has been that whenever our company would try to get in some sort of announcement because we did some successful project with these giant automobiles, they don't want to do it. I mean, they say we never lend our name to anyone else. They're very protective of the brand and the reputation,
especially BMW.
Now this is where Alex disagrees. This is where he disagrees, because he says BMW is famous for all these PR stunts that they keep on announcing all these things that never happen. Now, see where I would slightly disagree with him there is like, I think in those cases it's BMW announcing something about themselves. But when you kind of do the announcement with someone else, it may be a little bit different, because now BMW is really taking the risk of tarnishing their their name,
image, yeah,
if figure turns out to be a complete flop. So they must have done their homework a little bit here. And Brett even said last night in a post that, this is something they've been working on for 6 months. Now I assume it was like, some internal project they're working on, but no, it seems like a joint agreement of some sort they've been working on for 6 months, and that they're ready to announce it. So that means BMW has been giving this a little bit of due diligence, thinking about before we lend our name to that, this is what it's going to be. So I'll let everyone else decide. I think, Alex makes a good point also, and he has a good post out there saying why. He says, look, they've done this time and time again, and, is it or is it not? And so that's, again, from the branding standpoint, BMW better than I do, because they're basically in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, in the south as well. Yeah, but I know where Alex Voigt comes from there, that BMW and the German OEMs always love to, it's part of their game, as well as GM, for example. They announce something, they want to be looked at very good, that the stock is pumped a little bit. That's always a good thing. And then just slightly, not too much, very conservative also, but they announce stuff all the time. Also, VW is a champion in that, deceptive strategies. We know that. They paid the price for that in the US, of course. Electrify America was almost like a penalty to do. Actually, they had to do that. So that it shows also in the charging infrastructure. But now they kind of realize, wait a second, we have a charging infrastructure that we could utilize now. But yeah, let's see how this develops. But still, it's interesting to see. I get where he comes from. That's true. But you also make a lot of sense, or a lot of sensible points here, because they could tarnish their reputation. And it's interesting that BMW isn't the kind of company that likes to announce something out of the blue. I would even argue that the American brands are more open to that, to announce something and then, okay, it didn't work out. Because it's part of the culture in the US as well Right.
Yeah. You can see from the standpoint of Figure, any small startup, they need to get something out there. They need the exposure. They need people to have excitement about them. And they're the usual ones that are always pushing and prodding the partners they're working with. Can we make an announcement? And the partners are like, nope. They're always, we don't want to do it ahead of time, or we actually think this is a competitive advantage. We don't want our competitors to know about it. And you have to go through all these different departments to get sign-offs and everything else on it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like some lower level manager made this decision. And if you actually look at the press announcement, I think you have something like, the president for manufacturing of BMW North America. So it's up at a very, very high level. And trust me, he probably had to get sign off from BMW in Germany as well. It's like, is this a good thing that we're going ahead? Because you don't want to have one of those Mary Barra situations with Nikola. Like, you make the announcement and then it blows up in your face. Okay.
Yes.
And at the same time, you don't want to do this, because was it at CES that I think GM also showed some CGI of like some drone and everything else that they're going to have? I'm like, just give us an EV that works. We don't care about VTOLs coming from GM. And he's like, you're way, way in the future. You got to make sure you're profitable now. So a lot of times they will make these silly announcements. But again, that's like GM talking about GM. It's not GM necessarily partnering with someone else, even though we've seen they've made those mistakes by sometimes not doing their due diligence. So we don't know here. I would think BMW would be a bit more careful and circumspect to make sure that they've vetted whoever this partner is they're going with, because I know Figure is going to be like really eager. Please go on, let's go ahead and do it. We got to do a press announcement. We got to do the presser, and they're just going to say no. My companies, we've tried to do the same thing also when we go somewhere, and those companies are always like, no, we do not want to do that right now. You can't use our logo. In some cases, they will say, yes, we love working with you, but we don't even want you to list us as a user. So we have a lot of companies we cannot say are using our software, even though they are, just because they prefer to keep it a secret.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how the ball rolls most of the time. I would also agree, BMW isn't so easy to get taken advantage of, for example, from a smaller startup that just wants to pump their own valuation. So I don't think so. As well as maybe they have already a very concrete case study, even if maybe it doesn't work out. But I think it makes
and you're right.
much more
See there.
Yeah.
what it means is they could learn a lot about it, and might say, but you know what? This robot's not the one we want to go with. We think the humanoid form's going to work out okay. We've learned a lot, but we've noticed some other company over here is coming up with something that's either a little bit cheaper, has a capability. We've noticed they had some sort of success. And that happened also back in the 80s, when industrial robots were first starting to be used in industry. And a lot of companies were buying them. They didn't know what to do with them yet. So they made sure to buy 1 or 2 of them and bring in and start doing the testing and everything. And at some point they kind of figured out, and it doesn't mean they necessarily bought that brand forward, that they get the experience, and now their guys were able to go to trade shows and kind of look at what everyone else is doing and realize that, hey, wait a minute, now this is what we're looking for, is this brand over here. But now we know that's what we need because we have the internal experience. So it doesn't mean they necessarily would have egg on their face if something doesn't work out with figure. What it means is they've built up the experience and the reference that they need to be able to figure out what do we need going forward, or maybe we decided this is a bad idea, and they don't do it.
And I think when they follow through and just keep going at it more and more, they kind of really realize what they need. Like you said, it's the way it goes, and then they can adjust. And if they are serious about this, it's going to be shown now in the next couple of months and stuff like this. We're going to see more and more of that. And then we're going to see if they really jump on that thing, because BMW, in my opinion, actually needs something like this, because when they announce something like we want to have 50% of our fleet electric in 2035, sorry guys, that's a little late. And Tesla will have like 10 million cars produced easily until then, like in maybe 8 million in let's be conservative, 2030, they're going to produce 10 million or something, and then BMW announces something like this. I mean, it's horrible press releases to see that. Yeah, we had now this big news in the US that EVs cannot stand the snowstorm, and they are dysfunctional in Chicago. They didn't charge and stuff like this. But it's also, the consumer needs to know how EVs work. They need to know how to operate them, and that the battery needs to be preheated somehow. And if you're too close, I mean, you don't go to the charger with 20% in winter. It's a little bit dangerous to do that. Needless to say, I get the fear and everything. There is still a learning curve, but I don't see that hybrids are the future there, or even like internal combustion engine cars. So I think BMW will eventually change their course at some point. They have to. Right. I mean, in Germany, it's a little bit different now. People are very hesitant now with EVs here. I kind of feel that, but that's just, I didn't have any statistics, but still, that's my perception of the news and how it's spread right now. It's strange. It's a little bit very EV unfriendly now.
It's also the FUD. Again, this is something my mother-in-law saw on the news today, because we had the snowpocalypse here, where pretty much the Autobahn south of Cologne down to Frankfurt was just closed down, and like for a couple of hours. And they were just saying on there, it's like, wow, if anyone had an EV, this is like, if anyone had an EV, they wouldn't have been able to survive it. It wasn't like a report of anyone in EVs, but they were just saying, if you had an EV, you would have sat out there and your battery would have died. You wouldn't be able to handle it. I'm like, you know what? If you are stuck in a snowstorm like that, and you have like an eighth of a tank of gas, you're running out of gas and you're freezing if you're out there for a couple of hours, which is why whenever I've been driving in the wintertime, I have range anxiety. It's one of those things my dad always told me, that whenever you whenever you get to a quarter, you always fill up at that point, because you have no idea what's about to happen. You never take it down to empty, especially in the wintertime. Okay. So if it's the wintertime, and you know what, we've got this wonderful thing. It's called a weather forecast. I was going to go see Florian yesterday in Amsterdam. And we said, we're going tomorrow, Friday, because we knew the snow was coming in. So it's like, I'm not going out there because, I just don't want to be stuck in the Autobahn or anything. And I don't have an EV right now. It's like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So if you are not reading the weather forecast before you're going on a long trip, there's something wrong with you. And second, if you are going on it, you do make sure that you have sufficient amount of charge or gasoline to be able to do it. And in many cases, I have Canadian friends that have EVs and say it's great in the wintertime, even when you're in a stau or in a traffic jam, because it keeps you warm and you're not breathing the fumes or everything like that. So again, it was like a lot of this FUD that's coming along to make it sound like you don't want to have it. Here's another excuse. The reason why you don't want to. Here's another excuse. One of the best things about COVID, the fact that the city skies were clear, that you could go in there was no smog. blue
That's true.
skies, you weren't choking and stuff like that
Birds
from it.
chirping. Yeah.
Birds chirping and all that. And you know what? We can have that without the COVID.
Yeah. You've said that on our Christmas special as well. That also
Yeah.
stuck with me because it's true. I think it's an interesting point. I mean, one thing that the gasoline cars have, like, if really a snowstorm hits and you are stuck with your car somewhere else, I don't know, very remotely, of course having an internal combustion engine car is in that sense a better technology because that doesn't really have phantom drain, but still your car will get severely damaged also, and it's gonna freeze as well. So
I think it was
many
about
things won't work as well. Yeah.
If I recall, I think it was a little over 10 years ago. There was an editor from CNET that went on a Thanksgiving trip from San Francisco, I think somewhere up in Nevada. And on the way back, they got kind of lost. They got caught in a huge snowstorm. They were stuck out there for a couple of days, and they ran out of fuel. And then they were using the tires, and they were burning the tires and stuff like that and everything else. It's like, if you're stuck in the snow, it doesn't matter, whether it's an EV or gasoline. If you're stuck in there for a long time, eventually you are going to run out of fuel. And unfortunately, he perished because he was trying to find help and then got a little bit lost. And this was really before you had adequate cell phone coverage and everything else, and was not really able to make the call for help. So yeah, and there was no EV involved. So these tragedies happened because you were going to run out of fuel no matter what. And again, it always comes to be prepared. And of course, now maybe a tragedy like that won't happen because you'll be able to text to Starlink. You can be in the middle of nowhere and be able to actually send a text message for help.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. So I think interesting stuff here with the storm and the weather and the car itself. Okay, and we made a huge curve, but our starting point was BMW, of course, and BMW's strategy of EVs and stuff like this, and they are really focused on hybrids and on giving the customer the choice. I get the point. They don't want to take risks, but now is the time to take risks. And I think, like we said, for the narrative, for the press release, for the image of BMW, this makes a lot of sense to announce this collaboration with Figure here, with this great bot that they already started here. I mean, yeah, it's a very good thing going on. And of course, this will have an impact because now they are not the hybrids company that just wants to focus on hybrids. Now they are the company that are in robotics as well, or even consider that and being more innovative than we might thought. And I think the bot looks pretty good right now. And now maybe we can come into the segment where we maybe compare the two, because we have this bot. So we also see that it has the mechanical capabilities of doing this kind of task that it's doing, making coffee. And we have, of course, this kind of task. This is with a teleoperator, but still Teslabot already learned some processes already. We've heard about that, but we haven't seen really the big proof, of course. I mean, we need to still see that. We have had those this model where the Teslabot, how it sees their surroundings, how it's tagging the can where it waters the plant, for example. There was also a video. And yeah, now we have these two bots here kind of competing with an automotive company behind somehow. Yeah, so how do you view that? How is the hardware or the software? Do you think they are nearly on the right track or the same track? And what's the advantage over the one and another?
Well, the Gen 2 is a far more mature hardware design from what the Figure 1 is. And, everyone keeps on assuming that, it's going to be the Figure 8 is going to be the version that they release, just because it's a little bit of an inside joke. So there's obviously advantages to going through different design iterations. So it's a much more mature one, and you can see it's far more fluid. And when people pointed that out, Brett Adcock kind of shot back. He says, yes, but one of them was teleoperated, the other one was end-to-end. Well, we've seen end-to-end already with the Gen 1 robot back in September with the blocks moving around. So that was an example where they had also done the same kind of learning. They can do end-to-end. And now they've got a new generation, and they're having to sort of reteach it. They've got a new stack and everything else that's going on in there. It won't be long before we actually see it doing end-to-end. So I would say it's not like one of them is way ahead of something else. I think Tesla has the advantage right now on the mechanics. It's much better. I like the wrist design a lot more. It does seem to be a lot more fluid, and I believe that they're going to be on par with the AI. the other major advantage that Tesla's going to have is when it comes time to scale these, they're going to be able to scale them up pretty quickly. So Brett Adcock has said that all the actuators they have, they had to design them themselves, and they're making them themselves. So they have an internal shop where they can go ahead and produce those things. Well, they have to produce, I'm not sure what the total number of degrees of freedom is, probably also in the order of 40 or 42 like there is for the Gen 2 robot. That's a lot of actuators that you would have to build by hand just to build one bot. And so it's not like they're going to be able to scale up and crank these out and suddenly deliver by the end of the year 100 or 1,000 bots to BMW. That's kind of a big ask right now. Tesla is very close, and it is a good chance they already have a pilot line set up for their actuators, because they've redesigned the actuators from what the original design was. So these are the ones that are lighter and tighter and ready to go. So they will be able to crank them out at a pretty high volume pretty soon when they are really happy with the design, which I think they are very close. And again, that's something that Milan posted, that, you know, the hardware demonstration, it's able to do something with the dexterity that we want. You do not need to fold t-shirts on the shop floor. So you could say in some ways this is way beyond the task that's needed. Just like we've kind of joked before that you do not need to do parkour in most of your job descriptions. You know, backflips, cartwheels. You know, Dusseldorf is just across the run from me, and you know that's the home of the cartwheel. That's the actual symbol of the city of Düsseldorf is a cartwheel. So you don't need to do cartwheels in most jobs. Okay, so in a lot of jobs you do not require quite the dexterity that you need for, you know, being able to fold a piece of laundry or dealing with something that has that kind of flexibility in there. So there's many tasks on the shop floor that require a much lower level of capability than what we're seeing right there. And of course, they're not just looking at being able to do the lowest level capability things. They want to be able to do a lot more in the automation. So they're probably very happy with that at that point. So, you know, the Atlas bot is quite interesting as far as some of the capabilities of what it has. You know, again, we don't need to do backflips or anything like that. And in many cases on the job site, you know, you'll get fired immediately for pulling a trick like that.
Yeah, of course.
You know? It's like, no, we're not here.
Please, not near the other robots, please.
Right, exactly. So, you know, the walking speed and stuff like that, you do not need to sprint. No one's allowed to sprint in factories or anything like that, you know, except if there's like a tornado drill or something like that. Even then, they say walk out orderly. But for the most part, the capabilities of the bots will be well within what is required for these tasks. And it's just a matter of them deciding that the bots are ready, that they're satisfied with the software stack. They've got the training sets that are going on. And we can see from the Tesla job descriptions that they are hiring a lot of people now that are for activities that seem like deploying the Teslabot in the factory to do different operations, not just the training of them, but also like overseeing them, as well as looking at the production of the Teslabot, you know, ramping up on that. So there's lots and lots of those jobs that are suddenly showing up, and I'm sure will be filled pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy how to see actually those proofs everywhere, to see that they are gonna go and deploy those things. And it's interesting to compare the robotics companies to another, because I think then we can get the picture, the whole picture. Because for many people, it's also in the comments. I mean, the Teslabot video was about the Teslabot, not about the Boston Dynamics robot. But we've seen time and time again the big comparison, because of course, like we saw now, the backflip turning thing, or the
I think it's a 1 with a half twist,
80,
something like that. It's
yeah,
not it's not a 1.5. Yeah, it's basically you're doing a full flip, so you're doing a full roll with a half twist. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's quite impressive. That just shows how great the hardware is, the programmed hardware. But still, I mean, even if it has collision avoidance or something like this, those technologies are not so spectacular in comparison to a learning algorithm or AI brain that actually sees the world and tags the world itself, because that's the main difference here. And I think that's very important. But since everybody in the audience and everybody wrote in the comments as well, especially on the Teslabot video, I want to show now all the bots that are out there, like the biggest ones that were announced in 2024, or also like before in the last year. And maybe we can just talk over them a little bit and see what we have here, because I think that's very interesting here. So yeah,
Okay.
here's a kind of compilation here of all the bots. So yeah, we have Boston Dynamics,
Right.
of
So
course.
there's Boston Dynamics. Yep.
Sanctuary
And I think that's
AI is
Sanctuary.
this?
Yes. And they've been around
Exactly.
since 2016, and that's about their 6th generation bot. It seems like
Mhm.
they've got full degrees of freedom in the fingers. I know their earlier generations did not walk yet. And so I'm not sure if they've got their bot walking now, but I know they were working on that. And they seem to have full degrees of freedom in the torso, so they have a lot of movement in the spine. This one here
Oh yeah,
is,
wait a
I think
second.
that, yep. I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
which one that is. That's not the unit tree. Nope.
So yeah, maybe we're gonna go through that. That was just the intro, but of
Hmm.
course here's the Boston Dynamics robot. So maybe you can point out the difference. I talked about that a little bit. It is on pre-configured paths where the whole team is looking how to move, how to jump. These are coordinated. Yeah, those are choreographed things we are
Scenes,
seeing
yes.
right now. And this thing didn't have the idea to jump, but it's still impressive because all the sensor, of course, need to figure out where they are in the space in reality and actually land on the feet. But of course, we still don't see how many attempts it had, how much it fell over,
Right.
stuff like this. But still very impressive from the hardware standpoint. And also, of course, from the software standpoint, but it's not the same than the Teslabot, for example. Yeah, but
Right. Now, what you got to remember is
more.
1 hour runtime. It's using hydraulics, and with hydraulics, you can get a lot of power, which is why it's able to really jump like that to give the pop. The other thing is this bot is only 4'11", yet weighs about 200 pounds. Okay. The Teslabot is like 5'9". So it's about 10 inches taller and weighs about 125 to 130 pounds, something like that. So there's a lot of mass in there, but the mass is kind of concentrated down low because, normally gymnasts are a lot shorter than your average population. So you're able to get away with this by having a smaller bot, yet that bot is now below the 50th percentile that you would want to have for a humanoid bot that's going to be working in the factory. So so that's the reason why everyone's sizing their bots around 5'8" or 5'9", because that's sort of around where the 50th percentile would be. And that's sort of the normal size you'd want to have to be able to reach and do a lot of these different operations. It's designed very differently to do very different kinds of tasks. And again, with a runtime of an hour, that's just not going to last the factory. You need to have something that's at least 5 to 8 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, maybe, do you think this thing is easily mass produced? That's also the next part.
No,
Tesla
no.
has mass production in mind. So yeah,
right. It wasn't designed that way, and now they're trying to redesign it to make it easier to mass produce. Even then, I think they said these are close to $250,000, $250,000 a pop. So that's they got a long ways to be able to kind of cut that price down.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay.
And no
so
hands.
Boston
No real hands.
Yeah. Of course, those balls, and here I think it has. I don't know what it is, or if they are already there. Wait a second. Yeah. I mean, there's like grips, like two grips version, and it also had a ball version. But yeah. So Boston Dynamics is kind of not debunked, but still for the audience, Boston Dynamics on a different path. Let's just say that they're good. Like, it's a good R&D project. It's a good thing, and they should keep going, of course, and still develop, because they're developing a very specialized, very good, capable hydraulic robot, like Scott said. So no hate here, actually. Of course, it's awesome what they're doing, and all the robotics companies do great stuff. But yeah, Tesla makes the brain. That's the difference. That's so interesting. And also, Figure seems to also implement AI more, and that's also very interesting to see. But now maybe let's go to the next bot here that we have. This one is the Sanctuary AI bot. So maybe you can explain a little bit what's happening here.
They're based up in Vancouver. And again, I believe a lot of this is teleoperation, where they're able to sort of demonstrate the mechanical capabilities of the bot, and they also are working on different AI systems. And I believe they recently had a cooperation with, I'm trying to remember, OpenAI. There was something announced at CES, and I'm trying to remember, was it?
Yeah, but OpenAI, that's right. OpenAI is also in the field now. That's also a big news that we heard from CES, that OpenAI, I'm also not sure if it was Sanctuary, but they announced that they also try to give the brain, or they started with the
Oh,
software?
sorry, I think it was NVIDIA. NVIDIA came up with Isaac.
Yeah.
An API called Isaac, and I believe Sanctuary is one of the many partners they have. So again, they are all looking at who to partner with to be able to come up with the toolkits they need to start training these bots. And they started really with the hand dexterity. So they realized there's the triangle of mobility, brains, and the hands and the dexterity. So they've been focusing more on those two areas. They have a lot of teleoperation, and they're just starting to work on a bot that's able to walk. So mobility will be the next. But again, there's many tasks like this. If you're just working at a workstation, you don't necessarily need to walk, right? So there will be a lot of these applications where the torso can just be kind of mounted and can rotate around, and you may not have to move. And then there will be others where you would like to have mobility.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting, I think, about also these robots, what I've wanted to cover here as well is with OpenAI. It was an interview actually with, I think it was with Bill Gates together on his show. He also has a podcast. It was interesting because they were talking about that now we have more and more robot platforms actually where you can implement, like you've said, implement those smart software AI brains and put them in, or those large language models and put them into the bots to give them the commands as well and train them actually and give them like a brain. It's interesting because Sam Altman also was stating that he was starting with the software at first because it was the lower hanging fruit for him to start it this way, but hardware was always in mind as well. So yeah, that's pretty interesting to see that there was this development. That's why I also mixed it up with the CES announcement, because that's the podcast I still had in my mind since
and they're moving back in that direction. That they were thinking of robots early on and thought, well, you know, we would require way too many bots, and now they're thinking of pivoting back, and looks like they're looking for partners. And I think the partner that they came up with was 1X, if I remember, which is also a company based out of Norway that has had a mobile dual-armed robot for quite a few years right now, doing different tasks in sort of office environments, being able to go around and demonstrate its capabilities. It doesn't walk, but it has wheels. And again, for many situations, wheels may be fine. And depending upon what you're trying to do, you can spend an awful lot of time and effort just trying to figure out how to get your bot to walk. And if you're really just trying to solve the problem with the brain and the two arms going around there, it's not a bad shortcut to just say, we'll just put it on a mobile platform. We already kind of know how to do that. We'll figure out this walking thing later on. But right now, let's just go ahead and do this. So, I mean, it's a big decision how much you want to chew at one time. And if you really are saying, hey, it's all about the hands, the dexterity, and about the brain, we don't care about going upstairs and uneven surfaces. The use case might be fine. And so you could say that, well, it's not really a humanoid bot, it's got wheels. It's like, yeah, but they can remove the wheels eventually. And then we've already seen that there are some bots that have wheels that can also act very much like legged creatures, as we've seen with the animal from ETH. That is rather frightening because it started out without the wheels, and they decided to put the wheels on there just so they could go really fast to get to places, and then transition back to what seems to be a bipedal creature. That is also, I think, you know, the future could be sort of that way. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% mimic of a human body. We're going to see different forms, and eventually we'll find out, just like what evolution does. There's going to be survival of the fittest, and eventually we're going to find out which form factor wins. And I don't know if it's going to.
Suddenly we just see those ostriches from Boston Dynamics driving around the factories.
That's the best one. Velociraptors. That was like the best form ever. Everything's going to be velociraptors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I'm going to go through this video. We're going to just jump over it here real quick, because then we also have different technologies, of course, in robotics here, not just bots. Here, for example, the hand movements it looks very natural. That's also with hydraulics, I think, and very similar to the hand. That was clone robotics, or the clone robotics hand. Interesting concept. And
that's very nice because you get the full finger movement there. But again, in some cases, it may be overkill. You may not need that much in a factory. So to doing very dexterous things, I think, you know, James Dalma kind of talked about, it's like, well, you know, Optimus hands are pretty good for being able to pick up like a power tool and picking up, doing some picking and placing, but it won't work with a pair of scissors. This hand will. You would be able to use a pair of scissors with it. And it just really comes down to, it's like, well, when do you need a pair of scissors? Because usually you don't see a pair of scissors on the shop floor. Maybe, you know, some simple metal shops, fabricating where they're going to have tin snips and stuff like that.
T-shirt folding factory.
Right, right. But as far as the Tesla factory is concerned, you're probably not going to see it there. So there are going to be some situations where you don't need hands that are that complex. But it doesn't mean you wouldn't want that in the future. And there were some, and someone asked Elon, you know, in 2040, will there be like a billion humanoid bots? And, you know, he said, yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I guarantee you by 2040, when you have a billion of them, they probably will all have hands like that. They're not going to have the Optimus hands today. The Optimus hands today are a good start for us to understand what's going on. But eventually we're going to be able to figure out how to make those things, how to program them, to make them very smart, and how to produce them at scale really cheap. Yeah. But we don't know how to do that yet.
But that's so crazy. I mean, the hand movements, you can see it yourself. I mean, it's from the hardware perspective, that's ridiculous. It's so similar to you. I mean, of course, it's still very robotic, but I mean, the movements of the finger going apart and closing again. I mean, that's just awesome. That's nice future hardware. We can see Teslabot iteration 20 or something, or 15, or I don't know, will have this. And yeah, also here different kinds of that's from Toyota, I think, Toyota robot arm. Here that's going, it seems to be autonomously, they claim here, and
so this is kind of a standard robotic arm, you know, showing that they are able to do things autonomously, probably, you know, with the different kind of training sets that they have. And then of course agility robotics is the one right after that, with
Amazon here.
Yep. So agility is out of Oregon, and they looks like they have some sort of cooperative agreement with Amazon, you know, kind of similar to the BMW figure one, where they're going in to start testing how it's going to be used in the different Amazon warehouses for being able to do movement of totes. And again, the agility bot has everything except full hands. It has kind of, you know, a wrist and a palm, but it just doesn't have the fingers. Because the operations it's doing, they don't really require it. So if you don't require it, why put it on there? There's going to be plenty of tasks like that. They're very good at locomotion and movement because they actually started with the legs. They understood how to do bipedal motion and are very competent at that, and then figured out how to put the rest of it. And now they're learning also how to add large language models on this to be able to command and control it. So they're definitely one to watch, and they're already talking about scaling. They've already have started to build a manufacturing plant, which should be able to produce up to 10,000 of these a year once they get ramped.
Wow. Okay. So also for mass production and carrying boxes, that's important for Amazon, of course. That's their use case, and it makes sense. I mean, for example, the bots need to have a purpose, and this makes sense. These can be mass produced, like you said, and do the task. And the Amazon warehouse is already so automated with AWS, with their cloud system, and with the software integration. With the worker just scans the barcode and puts them into boxes and sends them out. And this is a task that, of course, a robot can do. And the Amazon factories already are super heavily automated with those smaller robots where transport, like those
the little Kivas.
Exactly.
They're called the Kiva bots. They are implementing them at a rate of 1,000 a day, which is a crazy number. And so Amazon needs 1,000 of them a day because they want to scale up to having several million of them throughout their warehouses worldwide. So that means in any one calendar year, they're able to put in another like 365,000 of these things. So if that's what they need for the little Kiva bots, you could then say, all right, if this agility bot is also able to sort of do what they want to within the factory, you can imagine they're going to need a lot of these as well. Now, it's not going to be the same number as these Kiva bots, which are just going out and kind of fetching things and bringing them to them. But it will be some factor of that. I don't know if it's like, 10 to 1, 100 to 1, or 1,000 to 1. That's still a big number. Easily 10,000 a year, probably, easily.
Absolutely. And so it's interesting. In the robotics field, there's happening so much. I mean, we're going to go through here again. Here, IMHC robotics is that with this one walking around, also with unstable ground.
Many companies are showing their bipedal robots, and giving them these challenges of being able to go up ramps and stairs in very uneven environments where there's always a possibility of tripping and falling. So
Hmm.
They're demonstrating their control systems. And of course, we've seen there are many examples of these companies of doing the kick tests, that as the bot is walking along, someone's coming up and kicking it from behind and hitting it with a hockey stick, doing whatever, because
Yeah.
they want to see that it has the stability to be able to stay up.
Yeah.
So, that's one
Absolutely.
trick that everyone has to kind of work on, is have something that's able to walk over a horrible surface like that. Because you can imagine if you were walking along that,
Yeah, I'm gonna fall.
you'd trip and fall very easily if you're not careful.
My sensors aren't functioning probably, I would say. Yeah, but that's also pretty interesting to see here that the bot is walking there. Then of course we have the Optimus Gen 2 that we talked about hundreds of hours already probably in together. I also talked a lot about this. So Optimus, like we already told the audience, like has a special use case of mass production, and he's folding a shirt right now, so that's a good thing. So it's going forward with the teleoperator, but this will be come into fruition soon, that it's going to do it himself. And here, GR1 humanoid robot. I haven't heard about that one before.
And that one is, I think that's from Fourier. It's a Chinese company that has been producing exoskeletons for use in rehabilitation in hospitals. So they've been around for, I think, well over a dozen years, or maybe a little bit longer. So they already have a lot of experience in trying to build platforms like that. And now they're getting ready to come up with their own bot. And I think they've talked about building about 100 of them, and then using them now for kind of research for the next year. So they're finding a lot of partners that are going ahead and trying to demonstrate the capabilities to find out what they can do with it. So it seems to be a capable bot that has full degrees of freedom, full hands, able to walk, and perception system, and there seems to be quite a lot of them.
Yeah, let's see how they are making the ones, or how they are going forward. Here is also LimX Dynamics. I mean, CL1.
Yep.
I also didn't have heard of that one. So
yep, and once again, a lot of people working in the field of trying to figure out how to get the bots to walk. So we're going to be hearing of a lot of companies coming out of China, just because there is a sort of I guess you could say, an aim of the government to put a lot of emphasis on creating these humanoid bots. You're going to see many of them. And that's why we haven't heard of a lot of them, is because there's just too many to keep track of.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the rest is more like technology warehouse robots that we have here. I mean, still very impressive stuff. Tunnel robots, you name it. I mean, very niche use cases. Also, airplane that is integrated with more sensors for the pilot, for the HUD, the heads-up display, and the robotic rubbers, those technologies that we have. I mean, we're gonna see those more or less in different ways implemented in robots in the future, like the hand we saw with the hydraulics that was very precise. If you have a use case that uses that, but so yeah, it's interesting stuff, because of course materials are important for the future. Material science will have a boom again, or more even. They already have a boom, of course. Material science is a huge field as well. So a lot competitors or companies stepping into the plan now on the field. Yeah, how do you view the future of all that? Do you see them succeeding everybody, or will there prevail some robotics companies, or how do you view the risk of all those companies? Because
I mean,
Tesla is
like
more
any of them
integrated with different stuff.
Right. Like anything, it's kind of risky, because you get a lot of startups, and some of them are going to merge, and some of them are going to fail, but a lot of them are going to succeed. And right now, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't, because there's such a huge addressable market. They just have to be able to find a particular niche in the partners they're going to need, and to make sure they have sufficient funding. So I think quite a lot of them will do well, because it looks like they are starting to get the partners that will be able to kind of keep them going, because that was always my concern. It's like, well, it's one thing to get the seed money together to start producing something, but if you can't start selling it, if there's a lot of reluctance in the marketplace to go ahead and do it, and it's like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and you're still not getting a whole lot of customers, then it's hard to move forward. So you've got to make sure that you are able to come up with something, and that it addresses a real problem. So you want to make sure you really have, not a problem looking for, you don't have a solution looking for a problem, but you really find what the problem is, find that niche, and go ahead and go there. And that's not a bad strategy in many cases, is to say that, okay, there's kind of a crowded market space, but which particular area is not being addressed that I think there's a lot of potential and go on in there. Tesla's been fine because they clearly have the deep pockets, and they are going to get the internal benefits from the lowering of the cost of the margins and everything else, and eventually something that they'll be able to make a lot of profit when they sell. And the others, Figure seems to have been smart. They've been going out and actively recruiting a lot of different partners. They claim they have at least, I think, a dozen others that are out there that they are working with. I know Singularity has been doing that as well, or Sanctuary has been doing that. Yep. And they are also backed by a lot of pretty big names up in Canada, as well as Magna, which is a very large manufacturer that also has some sort of interest. So I think they're on solid funding, and they probably also have a pretty good group of, let's say, potential clients, or just within their own the ownership, to be able to acquire the data that they need to understand how they need to move forward.
Yeah.
So
to find the
I
niche,
think it's going to be quite exciting.
If they just research by their own, they come up with something to do, but we need a very specific use case, and that's why partnering with other companies like BMW, for example, makes sense. And Tesla, of course, has their own use case with their robot, a very heavy one. And we also need people like Elon Musk, or also now BMW, maybe pushing for those kind of technologies and try to implement them as fast as possible to learn how to utilize the bots more and more. And and some of them, have learned to pivot pretty well, because if you look at like Agility, they started out from the Oregon State University, and it was more or less like a research project to figure out how to come up with bipedal motion, what would be this kind of legs, and pretty much setting the world record for 100 yards. And so they showed that they were able to solve the problem, the walking problem, but they didn't have anything else. And now it's like, okay, we've got this thing. What do we do with it? And eventually they spun out. They kind of formed Agility, and then they looked at the problem of how do we turn this into something, and they've kind of started building up. And then I think they begin to realize that, okay, we're building something which is a humanoid type of bipedal robot, but what's it good for? We better start finding a use case for this. And they started to do that. And you're able to see that when they announced last spring, they were at one of the trade fairs. I'm trying to think, it was Pack Expo that they were at, demonstrating that. They get a lot of press, and now they have a partner like Amazon. So I think they've been very successful in going from what was almost felt like just pure research, we're doing it just because we can, but we're not quite sure what the use case is, to really finding them and finding the right kind of partners, which is something that Boston Dynamics was not really good at. I mean, they were doing it for the longest time. Now I think they're starting to, because not necessarily with Atlas, but Boston Dynamics is beginning to find a revenue stream by actually building, ironically, more traditional type of robots based on some of the controls and the things that they've learned, which are actually very clever solutions, and I think will do very, very well. And of course, their Spot dog is probably the best example of something which is not a biped, but it's a quadruped. It is walking, and it has a very good use case. So in some cases, they're going along, and eventually they end up finding, hey, there is a use. Sometimes they're lucky, because there's this old expression, you build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door. So they may have been building this thing and not knowing what to do with it, and everyone said, hey, I can use that, and suddenly they all start coming rushing in. But you can't build a business case on speculation. I'm going to build this great thing, and the world's just going to come to me. I don't know what it's good for, kind of thing. But occasionally that does happen, and you'll see the same things happen kind of with Starlink, as everyone was at first like, oh, so people are just going to put it on their homes. But a lot of people looked at it and said, wait a minute, we have a business case for it. So you're finding contractors, people who do work out in the field and everything. John Deere now has inked something, because John Deere tractors, they need the internet in order for them to be able to operate in very, very rural environments. Who can provide the internet connectivity that they need? Wow. Absolutely.
Oh, who would have thought?
And even the technologies that we saw there, for example, that they made new developments also with Starlink, that it's nearer and nearer that we have a Starlink sheet on a car on the surface, and it just can arrange find the satellite still, because it's like Starlink's speciality is that the dish actually has inside some, just does it electronically with the wave to find what's called
satellite. It's a phased, it's what they called a phased array antenna, where they're able to electronically point it in any direction they want. Exactly. And so they have a field of view of, depending upon the size of the dish, of like 120 degrees. So rather than mechanically pointing to where you need to go, it's just able to do it electronically and do it like really fast. So that means it can track the satellite really quickly. And it's important to do it fast because once you lose that satellite, you got to get back to the one that's over there really quickly. So they can focus this way and they can focus that way really quickly. And Elon mentioned at the update that they had, I think a week ago, that they're coming out with a mini later this year that you can put in a backpack. So you'll be able to go hiking in the woods and have something that's probably the size of an iPad. That's what I suspect, something like that. And that will be pretty cool. Now, I don't know that it'll have the same, bandwidth that you might be used to with the normal dish, but still it'll probably be good enough for whatever it is you're trying to do if you're really in a very remote area. Plus, it won't use as much power. So, you're going to have to bring your own battery or do something like that when you're using it.
Yeah, and I still see, of course, with also the network connectivity and stuff like this, I mean, implementation of Tesla into the cars and or from SpaceX to Tesla. And there are also many use cases. And also with the robotics as well. I mean, the synergies that Tesla brings together here is so unprecedented, I think, in the whole market, I would say, because they have so many different angles to utilize stuff like this. Also, the robots, they can utilize them already. You've made many cases where they could use it, and of course, now it can fold Elon's shirts when he sleeps in the factory floor.
Yes.
It's so like this. But yeah, super awesome developments. Thank you for highlighting all those different companies as well a little bit. Have your expertise here is super awesome, and I think this kind of explains a lot to the audience as well. And don't think that we both are not excited about the different companies that are there, and all of them are very important to keep this technology going, and that we can see for dangerous tasks in space, for example, to have robots, humanoid robots that can be a companion maybe, and maybe free up the time for us. I mean, there is a concern, ethical concern there as well, of course, with replacing low-wage workers, for example, which is already they are struggling, and that's also a bad thing. But there are cases that you could make that fleet operators or put the money into education more and develop more job fields. I mean, we don't have blacksmiths anymore that also do the horses or not as many anymore, and carriage makers aren't so much seeked out for today. So change happens, and it might be a good thing. So maybe for the end of the episode, you have one big thing. How do you see the industry going? Do you see it's a good thing, a bad thing?
I see, more announcements coming. Again, I feel like this is the NACS, the next moment here, where now that BMW has sort of made that announcement, there's a good chance others will be less reticent to do it. So they're all kind of afraid that, maybe get ridiculed in the press about something like this. But now that that's happened, the others, if they haven't thought about it, they're going to start thinking more seriously about it, because they're going to realize that if BMW is doing it, it's a danger if they don't start at least investigating or thinking about who their partners are going to be. So I'm expecting to see some partnerships. And the other thing I guess we should say is, like, the next video we'll probably make together will be in person, right?
Yeah, of course, because we have something interesting lined up, because of course I have a Model 3 Highland now, or the refresh, the Model 3 update, however you want to call it, the Model 3 Plus, the 3 Fresh. And of course Scott hasn't tested that, and since he's an American being in Europe, he has to test the Model 3 that is not really available, but now you can order it. The production line is set up. And now Fremont will produce the Model 3 Highland as well. But it's the same version, actually, like the Chinese one. We've already heard that. It doesn't have a front-facing camera in the US as well. And we're going to look at it together with Scott. He's going to test that. And this video is coming up soon. So be excited to watch out for that. So that's a big announcement right now. Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
So, Scott, thank you very much. And
thank you, Jan.
Maybe you have something else to share with us, or just we leave the audience as it be?
Yes, well, we'll see you in your Model 3.
Absolutely. So thanks very much for watching this episode. If you have any comments down below or thoughts you want to share with us, please do that. Scott will jump in the comments as well and read them. So ask your questions like always. And thank you very much for being on, Scott. And please, of course, check Scott out. And there's only one last thing to say now, and that's goodbye, everybody.
Cheers.
Wasn't this episode awesome? Let's accelerate the pace of innovation by subscribing to TeslaFix. It is my absolute favorite channel on the whole interwebs.